Hey guys, tonight we're peeling back the pastel curtain and stepping into a world of casserole ambition, immaculate linoleum, and enough hairspray to single-handedly thicken the ozone layer, the secret life of the 1950s housewife. Forget what the sitcoms and detergent ads told you. Tonight, we're time-traveling to find out what actually happened inside those ruffled aprons. And trust me, it's stranger and funnier than any Stepford scenario you've ever imagined. Before you settle in, take a moment to like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Or confess your deepest cleaning product preference. Only do all that if you actually enjoy this, of course. There's no pressure here. Just a faint, lingering scent of lemon pledge. Now, I want you to dim those lights, put on a fan for that gentle hum, or, if you're feeling authentic, set your phone next to the dryer and nestle down somewhere cozy. Let yourself get comfortable because, for the next hour, you're about to become the hardest working person on your cul-de-sac. But let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered, did 1950s housewives really spend all day baking pies? How much time did they actually devote to vacuuming? And how much to dodging their neighbor's unsolicited Jell-O mold? Did Tupperware parties really get out of hand? Was there a secret black market for pineapple rings? Were girdles the medieval torture devices of post-war suburbia? Could you survive an hour in a house where every surface is both for guests and absolutely not for touching? How did anyone ever smile that much while scrubbing a bathtub with volcanic ash? And what was in that casserole, really? Congratulations, you've just woken up at 1954. The good news? You're the queen of your own domestic kingdom. The bad news? The kingdom expects a full roast. Hospital corners on the sheets, and no visible dust. Welcome to a day in the life of a real 1950s housewife. Roll up those sleeves. There's a lot of leisure to get through. It's 6 a.m., and your alarm isn't a smartphone, but a perky high-stakes rooster on the AM radio. You spring from bed, well, you try, with the reflexes of someone who has memorized every creak in floorboards and knows that breakfast has a dress code. The very first thing you notice. The house is cold. Not turn up the thermostat cold, but run and grab your robe before the linoleum bites your toes cold. Your feet slap the floor with military precision because, in the kingdom of suburbia, the first foot on the ground wins the hot water. The AM radio, blaring with a cheerful jingle and a perky voice reminding you to start your day the atomic way, is your morning drill sergeant. The commercials promise a future full of flying cars. But right now, your immediate future is a race against the coffee percolator's stubborn gurgle. You shuffle to the bathroom, performing a synchronized routine straight out of a Cold War ballet. Brush, rinse, hair set, and eyebrows forcibly encouraged into an arch of optimism. The mirror is merciless. It reflects not only your sleep-crushed curls, but the very real knowledge that, in this era, leaving your bedroom without a presentable face is considered a crime against both God and Betty Crocker. So you attack your hair with rollers and hairspray, ready to fog up half the county, and single-handedly fuel the space race. Lipstick on, one shade. Morning red, because this is a decade with exactly 3 acceptable lip colors, and all of them stain teacups until the end of time. Before you've even had your first sip of coffee, there's a checklist unfolding in your mind, like a government-issued punch card. Breakfast must be on the table in 23 minutes. Children must be dressed, teeth must be brushed, and someone, possibly you, must remember where the shoes migrated to during the night. You're working with an efficiency that would put any modern project manager to shame, juggling frying pans and schedules with a precision that is both ballet and battlefield. And always, always with a smile, because that's the unwritten law of the land. You move through the morning fog, in a house that expects order. There are invisible standards at play. The counters should glisten. The living room should look guest, ready by 7 a.m. And heaven forbid, a neighbor glimpses an unmade bed. Every movement is choreographed for maximum output and minimal chaos. The breakfast dress code isn't just for the kids. It's for you too. There's no rolling up to the table in sweatpants. This is the golden age of put together. Even if you feel like a science project held together with bobby pins and hope. And then comes the sound. A chorus of doors slamming, children tumbling down the hallway, and the inevitable crash that signals someone's cereal has met an untimely end. You glide, or let's be honest, speed walk, into the kitchen, deploying a stack of pancakes and a tactical supply of bacon. It's a performance, and you're both the director and the star, making sure everyone gets fed, dressed, and out the door with the right lunch and, ideally, the right child. As your husband enters, crisp suit, freshly pressed, you serve coffee with a smile that is 80% caffeine, 20% bravado. There's a moment right here where the house feels like a ticking clock, everyone and everything in motion, a symphony of post-war optimism and repressed existential dread. Maybe you glance at the headlines: nuclear standoffs, new appliances, the occasional Martian sighting. You wonder, briefly, if anyone in those flying cars they keep promising will ever invent a machine that folds socks or makes a breakfast that doesn't require 6 pans. By the time the last coat is buttoned and the front door slams shut, the house returns to silence. You breathe. You survived the first battle of the day. The atomic wake-up call is over, but the rest of your marathon is just beginning. Your hair is set, your apron is starched, and the only thing truly certain is that, by the time the sun sets, you'll have repeated this ritual down to the last caffeinated detail. Welcome to the 1950s, where even waking up feels a little bit like preparing for liftoff. Before you even see coffee, you wrestle yourself into a girdle, a feat requiring upper body strength, advanced breathing techniques, and a firm denial of blood flow to the lower limbs. Comfort? Optional. Social survival? Mandatory. The first challenge of the day isn't breakfast, it's structural engineering. The 1950s girdle is not a garment so much as an architectural statement, designed to hold you together in the way a steel bridge holds back a particularly optimistic river. There's a reason these things are called foundations. You stand there, squinting at the contraption, trying to remember which way is up, which side is the front, and which end will eventually crush your dreams of breathing freely. Forget yoga. If you can get this thing over your hips without popping a hamstring, you've basically achieved enlightenment. You begin the process, one leg at a time, like a mountaineer preparing for a solo ascent of Everest, but with less oxygen and more elastic. Girdles were marketed as supportive, but that's like calling quicksand cozy. You grip the elastic with determination, wriggle, shimmy, and perform what could only be described as a cross between a rain dance and a hostage negotiation. There's a brief, slippery moment where you worry it might just win this round, and you will, in fact, have to call for help. But you soldier on, muttering encouragements to yourself and maybe to the patron saint of industrial rubber. As you finally snap the hooks into place, there's a quiet triumph, a small, private victory. You are now being held together by science, commerce, and the unspoken social contract of the suburbs, and you're not alone. Somewhere across town, 10 other women are all engaged in the same morning wrestling match, gritting their teeth and praying no one invents yoga pants for another 50 years. Modern shapewear claims it's seamless and comfortable. In the 1950s, the only thing seamless was your resolve. Once installed, the girdle works its magic, instantly transforming your shape from sleep-deprived to mid-century hourglass. The silhouette is iconic. Flat stomach, cinched waist, hips just prominent enough to suggest fertility without threatening the patriarchy. Your clothes, pre-selected for maximum structure, now slide on like you're starring in a detergent commercial. But the illusion comes at a price. The kind of internal compression usually reserved for submarine hulls and astronauts. Sitting? Sure, if you like bending at a 45-degree angle and hoping nothing snaps. Breathing? Only as much as the situation requires. Now comes the strategic planning. Every move for the rest of the day will be carefully choreographed to avoid wardrobe malfunction and prevent your organs from attempting a prison break. You develop a sixth sense for low furniture, stairs, and children approaching at high speed. Getting into the car requires a maneuver known only to 1950s housewives and contortionists. You bend, you glide. You hope no one can hear the faint creak of elastic under strain. Why do you do it? Because you must. The stakes are high. You live in an age where being put together is not a preference, but a non-negotiable social requirement. One unsmooth silhouette, and it's whispered about at the beauty parlor for weeks. Housewives don't sweat. They glow. But if anyone ever glowed hard enough to melt a synthetic fabric, it's someone wearing a girdle in August. As the day unfolds, you develop a wary respect for this technological marvel. Yes, it's oppressive. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But in a strange way, it's also armor. A literal barrier against the judgmental stares of Mrs. Miller and the existential dread that you might someday be frumpy. You even start to take a kind of pride in your ability to function under pressure. A pressure measured not in PSI, but in the determined set of your jaw and the careful arch of your eyebrows. When evening finally comes and you peel yourself out of the girdle, gently, reverently, as though deactivating a Cold War bomb, there's an immediate rush of relief, blood, and hope. For a brief, glorious moment, you can move, breathe, and remember what it feels like to be an uncorseted mammal. But you know, deep down, you'll do it all again tomorrow. In the 1950s, comfort is fleeting, but a smooth silhouette is forever. You glide, hobble, into the kitchen, determined to deliver a hearty American breakfast. Eggs, bacon, pancakes, because apparently cholesterol is for the weak, and so is portion control. The kitchen at this hour is less domestic haven and more culinary battleground. The coffee percolator huffs and burbles on the counter like a locomotive fueled by the dreams of tired women everywhere. The fridge hums with a barely suppressed sense of dread. Knowing that you're about to strip it of every egg, slab of bacon, and suspicious-looking jar of marmalade it contains. The sun is barely up, but your work is already cut out for you. In the 1950s, breakfast is not an afterthought. It is the opening ceremony, a display of household competence and motherly devotion. Even the dog is watching to see if you'll burn the toast again. You get to work, cracking eggs into a skillet with one hand while flipping pancakes with the other. The spatula is your scepter, the oven mitts your gauntlets. Bacon sizzles, toast pops, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the sound of children arguing over whose turn it is to sit nearest to the only chair that doesn't wobble. You must move fast. Timing is everything. If you leave the eggs for 10 seconds too long, they're rubber. If you leave the bacon for 5 seconds too little, you're serving trichinosis. It's a culinary dance with very few survivors. And all the while, you must look serene. No one wants to see panic in the eyes of the woman wielding the frying pan. Housewives magazines advise that a calm smile is as essential as a hot meal, so you plaster on your June Cleaver expression, even as you mentally tally up how many napkins you'll need to mop up syrup later. The radio hums in the background, offering cheery news about new cars, nuclear tests, and the unbeatable virtues of the modern American home. You nod along as if the words alone might encourage the biscuits to rise. By the time the family enters, the kitchen has transformed. The table is set with military precision. Juice glasses perfectly aligned. Butter on a little plate. With a knife, never a spoon, never your finger. And a stack of pancakes tall enough to satisfy a lumberjack or a teenage boy. Your children slide into their seats, still in their pajamas, hair pointing in several directions at once. Your spouse sits down with the air of a man who has never and will never consider how a pancake happens. The family dog lurks underfoot, rehearsing its starving orphan face. Of course, no breakfast would be complete without minor chaos. Someone spills juice, someone else starts a fight over bacon allocation, and someone, usually the youngest, announces that they now hate eggs. All eggs. Forever. You handle these complaints with the measured diplomacy of an international peace negotiator. If a pancake falls on the floor, you offer another with a smile that says, "This is fine. This is normal. Please do not call Child Protective Services." Between bites and bickering, you keep one ear tuned for signs of mutiny. Is the syrup too runny? Is the toast too dark? Was it the right kind of jelly? The answer, of course, is never a resounding yes. But in the 1950s, breakfast isn't about personal satisfaction. It's about a show of domestic might, a daily affirmation that the American dream starts right here, on a linoleum floor dusted with flour and hope. The meal, like all good battles, is over quickly. Plates are cleared, the table wiped, and suddenly you're surrounded by a flurry of shoelaces, backpacks, and complaints about school. As your troops march out the door, you survey the scene. Crumbs on the floor, bacon grease on the stove, and an inexplicable smear of peanut butter on the curtains. You take a breath, reach for the coffee, and know you'll fight this battle again tomorrow, armed with nothing but optimism, a spatula, and the unbreakable resolve of the mid-century American housewife. Now it's time to wake, wrangle, and somehow present your children for school. Every cowlick is an enemy. Every mismatched sock a potential scandal. Somewhere in this chaos, a lunchbox will go missing. And it will be your fault. There's a unique art to waking 1950s children. It's less like opening curtains on a Broadway show, and more like trying to rouse hibernating bears with only a smile, a gentle voice, and the threat of no dessert. You start with the oldest, who has perfected the "I'm still asleep" performance to Oscar levels. The younger ones are already halfway out of their pajamas and into a fistfight over who gets the cereal box prize. Your maternal authority is tested before sunrise. You know the drill. Every head must be brushed, every tooth accounted for, every shirt tucked with military precision. You wield the hairbrush like a conductor's baton, attacking stubborn cowlicks with a combination of spit, determination, and the faint memory of what it was like to have personal time. There is always one child who claims their socks itch, another who has lost one shoe. Not both, never both, and at least one who swears today is Crazy Hat Day, despite all evidence to the contrary. You lay out outfits with the strategic planning of a NASA launch. Collared shirts, pleated skirts, suspenders, all must be stain-free and freshly ironed. Wrinkles are not just a laundry issue. They're a commentary on your parenting, your values, and possibly the stability of Western civilization. There's no such thing as good enough. In the 1950s, children are expected to leave the house looking like tiny ambassadors for the family brand. Lunchboxes are the next challenge. You pack sandwiches, fruit, and maybe a cookie. Never two. Discipline is important. The sandwiches are carefully cut, Crusts optional depending on the phase of the moon or the last PTA meeting. You include a cheery note, hoping it will survive the melee of the playground. Inevitably, someone can't find their lunchbox, even if it is literally in their hand. This is where your psychic abilities come in handy. You're expected to know where everything is, at all times, even things that do not exist in the material world. Next, it's time for the shoe roundup. This involves crawling under beds, sifting through coat piles, and offering silent prayers to the household gods of lost things. You find shoes in the laundry, behind the couch, sometimes inside a cereal box. Don't ask. Matching socks are a dream never quite achieved, but you fake it with enough confidence that nobody notices, except maybe Mrs. Wilson next door, who keeps a ledger of your laundry infractions. And then, the final inspection. You line the children up, smoothing collars and checking faces for stray toothpaste, breakfast crumbs, or unexplainable bruises. The standards are high. Every face scrubbed, every nose wiped, hair gleaming with the combined efforts of pomade and maternal desperation. You send them to the bathroom for one last check, where they manage to untuck everything you just tucked and somehow emerge with a new stain. This is the moment when you wonder if the ancient Greeks invented the concept of futility after watching their children dress themselves. As the clock ticks toward the sacred moment of departure, there is always a crisis. Forgotten permission slips, missing mittens, or an emergency I need to build a diorama of the entire Louisiana purchase by 8 a.m. You solve it all, armed with tape, ingenuity, and a suspiciously large collection of shoehorns. Finally, the bus arrives, honking with the subtlety of a nuclear drill. You usher your children out the door, straightening a collar here, tucking a note there, and offering kisses that they wipe away as soon as you turn your back. The chaos subsides. The house grows still. For one glorious moment, you stand in the doorway, victorious general of the suburban morning battlefield. The campaign is over until 3 o'clock, and when your neighbor waves from her porch, you wave back, both of you sharing the secret knowledge that nobody ever really has it together. But in this neighborhood, it's the effort and the emergency stain remover that counts. Your spouse is next, requiring, by law of the cosmos, a pressed suit, a briefcase, and toast cut on the diagonal. You must smile supportively, even if your mascara wand just stabbed you in the eye. There's a special choreography to launching a 1950s husband into the world, and it's somewhere between prepping an astronaut for liftoff and assembling a very delicate soufflé. You know the routine by heart. His shoes must be shined to a level that could blind passing motorists, his tie knotted perfectly, and his coffee poured just so. Never too hot, never too cold, and always, somehow, the same mysterious shade of executive brown. You begin with the suit, which has been pressed within an inch of its polyester blend life. One errant wrinkle, and the natural order collapses. You help him into the jacket, inspecting seams and shoulders as if you're prepping him for a photo op with the president, or at least with the Johnsons next door. A quick brush of the lint roller, a last-minute check for stray crumbs, because nothing ruins a morning quite like last night's meatloaf clinging to a lapel. The pocket square must match, the cufflinks must glint, and the cologne should be detectable but not aggressive. You live in terror of him smelling too interesting before 9 a.m. Breakfast is a critical step. There is no such thing as grab a granola bar on your way out. This is an era where breakfast is not only the most important meal of the day, but also a silent referendum on your competence as a wife. You present eggs with military precision, pour juice with a steady hand, and arrange the toast, always on the diagonal, because apparently squares are for communists. There is an art to balancing his breakfast plate, so it looks bountiful but not gluttonous. And crucially, nothing touches anything else. While he eats, you engage in polite, supportive conversation. Nothing too heavy. The Dow Jones, the weather, perhaps a gentle reminder that the car needs an oil change. Your tone must be soothing and breezy, even if you've just discovered the dog has eaten someone's history homework and there's a glob of mascara threatening to take up permanent residence on your eyelid. Complaints are not part of the menu. You are a cheerleader, a secretary, and a crisis manager, all rolled into one. As the clock ticks down departure, the routine ramps up. You hand him his briefcase, a perfectly packed black box of American ambition. You have, by now, memorized its contents. Pens, pocket notebook, mysterious files, and probably a bologna sandwich wrapped with more care than most international shipments. His hat is waiting by the door, brim dusted and ready for action. You fetch his coat and umbrella. In case of rain, or light drizzle, or a 3% chance of cloudiness, and remind him where he left his car keys, even though he's looked in the same spot 4 times. There's always a last-minute scramble. Maybe a button comes loose. Maybe the sports section has gone missing. Maybe he's misplaced the one report he actually needs. You respond with the calm efficiency of a nuclear technician, fixing what needs to be fixed, finding what needs to be found, all while keeping one eye on the clock and the other on your rapidly cooling coffee. And then, at last, the front door opens. You send him off with a smile, a kiss on the cheek, public displays of affection, just enough to be charming, never scandalous, and a gentle warning to drive safely. He walks out, a pillar of suburban stability, ready to conquer the world, or at least the office supply closet. You watch him go, taking a small, secret pride in the knowledge that if anyone asks how he manages it all, the answer is standing in the kitchen, quietly wrestling with a mascara wand and the toast crumbs he left behind. As the door closes, you exhale, bracing yourself for the day ahead. You've launched your husband into orbit, crisp, caffeinated, and properly accessorized. Now, at last, you can take a moment to breathe, to finish your coffee, and to marvel at the fact that, before 8 a.m., you've already performed 3 miracles and a minor act of breakfast diplomacy. Welcome to the glamorous, invisible machinery behind every successful 1950s man. One very awake, very competent housewife. Breakfast cleared, it's on to dishes. But don't just wash. You must make the counters gleam so fiercely that the neighbors can see their reflection and question their own life choices. Welcome to the post-breakfast workout, also known as kitchen calisthenics, a full-body, high-intensity routine involving suds, muscle memory, and the silent judgment of every imaginary visitor who might, at any moment, peer through your window and gasp at a water spot. The battle isn't just against grease, it's against the creeping suspicion that Mrs. Miller next door really does come over just to check the shine on your pros. Stainless steel. You start with the dishes, stacked precariously beside the sink, a monument to the hearty American breakfast and the unspoken rule that every meal must generate at least 3 times as many dirty plates as there are people present. The water runs hot, the soap bubbles rise, and you don your rubber gloves like a surgeon about to perform a life-saving operation on a pan that will, in all likelihood, never truly be clean again. Every plate is a mini-boss battle. Pancake syrup clings to ceramic with the tenacity of a 1950s housewife to her mascara wand. Egg yolk, left for more than 30 seconds, sets into a resin harder than any known mineral. Bacon grease, oh, the bacon grease, mocks your efforts, sliding around the pan in defiance of the laws of physics. You scrub, you rinse, you stack, all the while maintaining a posture worthy of a magazine cover. This is not just washing up, This is performance art. But dishes are only the opening act. Once the last glass is dried and put away, you turn your attention to the counters. In the world of 1950s suburbia, clean is never just not dirty. Clean means every surface must gleam like it was blessed by the kitchen appliance gods themselves. You wield your sponge and cleanser with the zeal of a missionary, working circles into the laminate until it blinds anyone who dares look directly at it. If your counters can't double as a mirror for a surprise lipstick application, you're not done. And of course, there's the sink. The sink is a stage for your ambitions and your insecurities, because nothing says domestic goddess like a porcelain basin so white it looks photoshopped. You attack water stains with a vengeance, buff out every spot, and finish with a spray of lemon-scented polish. The scent wafts through the house, a signal as ancient as time that something here is cleaner than it has any right to be. Next up, floors. You sweep with brisk, efficient strokes, banishing every breadcrumb to the dustpan. The linoleum must pass the sock test. No crumbs, no stickiness, just a smooth glide, and maybe a faint whiff of wax. If you have time, you mop, chasing stubborn stains like a private detective working a particularly challenging case. If a drop of orange juice has found refuge under the fridge, you get it. Not today, citrus villain. All of this unfolds to the soundtrack of a radio commercial for dish soap promising miracle results. You wonder idly what sort of miracle it would take to clean the rest of the house with one swoop of a wand. But you soldier on, fueled by coffee and the invisible competition to have the shiniest house on the block. Occasionally, you pause to survey your domain. The kitchen sparkles. The air tingles with the scent of lemon and righteous accomplishment. And, for one shining moment, you almost believe the advertisements. A clean home is a happy home, or at least a home where you won't be haunted by the ghost of your mother-in-law popping in for a surprise visit. As you hang up the dish towel with a flourish, you allow yourself a brief moment of satisfaction. The kitchen is ready for the next round. Lunch, snacks, a neighbor dropping by just to say hello, and then subtly checking your stovetop for dust. You've completed kitchen calisthenics, survived another round in the arena, and your counters are now so clean that, if the Cold War gets any colder, you could probably signal for help using nothing but the reflection off your sink. You take a deep breath, straighten your apron, and move on. Because in the life of a 1950s housewife, the next battle is always just around the corner, sometimes wearing a smudge of jam and a suspiciously innocent smile. The laundry pile is neither alive nor dead. It simply is, like a household deity. You sort, soak, scrub, wring, and hang, if you're lucky, outdoors where the breeze smells faintly of grass, cigarettes, and existential dread. Every era has its great unanswerable questions. What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? And how, exactly, did so many socks disappear between the hamper and the drawer? In the 1950s, laundry is less a chore and more an epic quest, the sort that forges heroes and breaks lesser mortals. You stand before the mountain of linens, play clothes, and mysterious handkerchiefs. The air thick with the scent of detergent and impending doom. The washing machine is humming in the corner, but let's not kid ourselves. It's more of a ceremonial participant than an actual labor saver. The first step is the sorting, a ritual that would confound even the most advanced artificial intelligence. Whites, colors, delicates, towels, mystery fabrics that defy labeling, all must be separated with the precision of a Cold War codebreaker. One red sock sneaks into the white load, and suddenly you're explaining to the PTA why your entire family is dressed like peppermint candies. You consult labels, debate the proper temperature for boiling out grass stains, and contemplate whether permanent press is actually a thing or just suburban folklore. Soaking comes next, and here is where true patience is required. Stubborn stains are not defeated with a quick spritz. They require soaking, scrubbing, and, if necessary, invoking the ancient spirits of ammonia and elbow grease. You attack grass stains as if you're personally avenging every ruined picnic, scrubbing with a bar of soap, and the kind of determination that only comes from knowing there is still another basket to go. If the stain survives 3 rounds of treatment, you start to respect it, maybe even fear it. You vow to never serve beets or grape juice again. Then comes the ringing, the upper body workout nobody asked for. If you have a fancy washing machine, it vibrates and churns in a valiant but ultimately underwhelming attempt to wring out the water. If not, it's all up to you, your forearms, and a will of iron. You twist, squeeze, and wrangle each piece of fabric, hoping the neighbors aren't watching as you grimace and grunt your way through the pile. Somewhere, a manufacturer is promising wrinkle-free fabrics, and you suspect it's just a rumor started by someone who has never actually met a pair of damp jeans. Hanging the laundry is an art unto itself. Outdoors is best. Clotheslines strung across the backyard. Wooden pins clamped with the intensity of a family secret. The breeze whips the sheets. Sunlight bleaches away stains. And for one fleeting hour, everything smells like hope. And yes, the neighbors' pall malls. Indoors, on rainy days, it's a balancing act of racks, radiators, and the perpetual fear that your living room will smell like damp socks for the rest of time. Folding arrives just as you're contemplating a career change. Every item must be crisp, creased, and sorted. Towels stacked, socks paired as best as the universe allows, shirts folded into shapes that would make origami masters weep. The children will undo your efforts within minutes, but that is beside the point. In the 1950s, a neat linen closet is a badge of honor, proof that you are keeping the forces of chaos at bay. But here's the existential truth. Laundry is never really finished. Even as you put away the last dish towel, somewhere in the depths of the house, another shirt is being dirtied. Another sock is plotting its escape. You have lived another day, conquered the endless cycle. And for a few precious moments, your family is dressed, pressed, and ready to face the world. You breathe in the faint scent of soap, cigarettes, and satisfaction, and move on, because tomorrow the pile will return, inevitable as the sunrise, stubborn as hope. In the 1950s, laundry is a cycle, a trial, and an act of love, repeated over and over in the quiet war against the untamable wilds of suburban life. The rotary phone rings. It's either your mother, your neighbor, or the PTA, each conversation requiring maximum diplomacy and at least 2 false. "Oh, I just have to check the oven escapes." In the kingdom of 1950s suburbia, the phone is not just an appliance. It's a battleground, a confession booth, and a lifeline all rolled into one pastel plastic shell. You never really answer the phone. You step into the ring. The cord stretches across the kitchen, trapping you in a web of social obligations and news bulletins, mostly about people you've never met but now feel deeply invested in, thanks to Mrs. Jenkins 2 houses down. There's an art to the phone greeting. You must sound cheerful, never rushed, never desperate, even if you're holding a dripping dish in one hand and a toddler in the other. "Hello?" you say, channeling both politeness and plausible deniability. If it's your mother, brace yourself for a conversation heavy on unsolicited advice, thinly veiled critiques of your potato salad, and subtle interrogations about whether you've heard from your cousin Lorraine. If it's the neighbor, you shift gears to neighborhood espionage. Who painted their shutters red? Who forgot to mow their lawn? And whose dog did what and where? Then there's the PTA. a force of nature unto itself. If you hear, "Hi, this is Marjorie from the committee," you know you're about to be conscripted into another bake sale or asked to just whip up a little centerpiece for the spring social. You muster a smile so big it can be heard through the phone line and prepare your first tactical maneuver, the well-timed oven excuse. "Oh, I'd love to talk more about selling 200 cupcakes at the school fair, but the roast is just about to burn. Can I call you right back?" This is code for I need to scream into a pillow for 30 seconds before I agree to anything. You become a master of small talk, able to weather any conversational storm. If the call is social, it's a gentle sparring match of compliments and confessions, sprinkled with updates about mutual friends and the latest installment of Who Moved the Mailbox Without Telling Anyone. You swap recipes and rumors, always careful to sound supportive but never too interested, lest you get drawn into the quagmire of an actual in-person visit. If someone mentions the phrase, "stop by for coffee," you know you're dangerously close to hosting a mid-morning summit. Phone calls in the 1950s are public sport. Privacy is an illusion. The cord barely stretches around the corner, so you have a captive audience. Children eavesdropping, spouse raising an eyebrow, dog hoping it's the butcher calling. Every word must be carefully chosen. Every pause filled with just the right mix of enthusiasm and plausible fatigue. The wrong tone, and you'll be the subject of next week's gossip chain, forever remembered as the one who sounded cranky when I called at 8:45 on a Tuesday. Sometimes you try to end a call gracefully. "I should really go, there's laundry, and the ironing board is calling my name." But true experts know the double excuse strategy. You simultaneously check the oven and remember a pot of coffee about to overflow. By the time you're finally released, you've committed to a bake sale, discovered 3 new neighborhood feuds, and learned that Mrs. Peterson's son is dating a girl with suspiciously blonde hair. But it's not all diplomatic footwork and coded evasions. The phone is also a lifeline, a source of real comfort, quick laughs, and genuine connection. A call from a friend can save you from an afternoon of solitude or a moment of doubt about whether your kids will ever eat a vegetable. You hang up a little lighter, sometimes reminded that behind every closed door on the block, someone else is juggling casseroles, calendars, and existential dread. When the receiver finally clunks back into its cradle, you breathe a sigh of relief. You've survived another round of the Grapevine Olympics, reputation mostly intact, and as you wipe down the kitchen counter with one hand and jot a PTA reminder with the other, you can't help but marvel at the miracle of the rotary phone. A device capable of causing both chaos and connection, one carefully curated conversation at a time. Your Hoover is your chariot, your badge of honor, and your only sanctioned weapon against the creeping terror of dust bunnies. The carpet is both your canvas and your battlefield. Vacuuming in the 1950s isn't just a chore, it's a ritual. The moment you plug in the Hoover, you become a knight, armed with suction power and righteous indignation. Your opponent, the endless parade of crumbs, hair, and the mysterious grit that multiplies no matter how many times you tell your family to wipe their feet. Housewives magazines say the ideal home should smell like lemon polish and look like the set of a detergent commercial. So you march forward, determined to eradicate every speck of evidence that human beings actually live here. The vacuum itself is a beast, built like a tank, weighing as much as a medium-sized dog, and sounding like a jet engine clearing for takeoff. There's nothing discreet about vacuuming. The minute you start, it's a household announcement. I'm cleaning. Witness my virtue. Even the neighbors might pause to wonder if you're rearranging the furniture or prepping for a moon landing. You approach each room with military precision. The living room is the main event, a parade ground for the family, and the first place guests see. You pull out the furniture, sometimes with the raw strength of a circus performer, revealing entire civilizations of lost pennies, petrified cereal, and the occasional plastic soldier in exile. Each pass of the Hoover is an exercise in strategy. Slow, steady, overlapping lines, creating that telltale freshly vacuumed pattern. If you finish and the pile is smooth, you pause for a moment of silent satisfaction. You may never know peace, but at least your carpet does. Next, the hallway gauntlet, narrow, heavily trafficked, and inexplicably sticky. Here, you navigate shoes, book bags, and whatever the dog dragged in. The Hoover roars over the tiles, swallowing grit and grudges with equal gusto. Sometimes you imagine you're piloting a submarine through enemy territory, dodging landmines in the form of Lego bricks and rogue marbles. Survival depends on keen eyesight, a firm grip, and an unwavering sense of purpose. Bedrooms are more treacherous. Beds are magnets for dust ruffles and lost socks. And the vacuum's power cord is just long enough to get you tangled in an existential crisis. You bend, stretch, and contort, cursing every time the plug yanks free from the wall. Extension cords are both blessing and curse. Yes, you can reach the far corner, but now you're a tripping hazard in heels. You make a mental note to invent a cordless vacuum, then sigh, knowing that kind of modern magic is at least 30 years away. And let's not forget the satisfaction of the vacuum bag. When it's full, you've got proof of your battle. You remove it with caution, holding it aloft like a trophy, careful not to let a single dust bunny escape. Replacing the bag is an act of faith and skill, requiring a combination of brute force, prayer, and, sometimes, a second pair of hands. And yes, you will be vacuuming up the aftermath of changing the bag. Why all this effort? Because in the 1950s, cleanliness is more than a habit. It's a point of pride and a social currency. The neighbor who keeps the cleanest house is an unspoken champion, admired and slightly feared by all. You vacuum for reputation, for the comfort of your family, and for the hope that today, just maybe, you'll finish before someone drops a peanut butter sandwich face down on the rug. When you finally switch off the Hoover, the house is transformed. The air hums with electricity and accomplishment. The carpet looks almost new. The room smells faintly of progress. And for a brief, shining moment, you've beaten back the tide. You hang up the power cord, stand back, and admire your domain. The arms race isn't over, but today, at least, victory is yours. Suddenly, it's mid-morning, and you're hustling off to a Tupperware party. It's less about food storage and more about Cold War alliances, passive-aggressive salesmanship, and keeping up with Mrs. Miller's new avocado green set. Tupperware parties are the unofficial stock exchange of 1950s suburbia, a covert marketplace where the currency is airtight lids, and the stakes are nothing less than neighborhood supremacy. These gatherings masquerade as friendly get-togethers, but don't be fooled. Beneath the cheerful veneer, there's an undercurrent of competition sharper than any salad knife. The hostess greets you with a smile that's 2 parts hospitality, 1 part strategic calculation. She wants to sell. You want to socialize. But everyone knows the real prize is leaving with your dignity and maybe a new butter dish. You step into a house that smells like lemon pledge and ambition. The living room has been staged to perfection. Doilies at attention, cookies on matching plates, and every scrap of Tupperware polished until it could double as a signaling device for passing aircraft. You find your spot among the ladies, all carefully arranged on the edge of the sofa like a row of pastel-clad diplomats. Your purse is on your lap, your polite laugh polished and ready for deployment. Let the games begin. The Tupperware lady stands at the front, part salesperson, part motivational speaker, wielding her plastic wares with the authority of a field general. She demonstrates each piece with the kind of reverence usually reserved for crown jewels, clicking lids with a satisfying burp that somehow fills the room with both hope and mild, existential dread. "Just listen to that seal," she says, eyes alight with the fervor of someone who has survived 3 husbands and countless potlucks. You nod appreciatively, as though you too have strong opinions about modular freezer containers. Then comes the soft sell, which is not soft at all. The hostess starts by sharing just how much easier her life has become since discovering the wonders of polyethylene. She winks. Someone in the back murmurs about the old days of wax paper and string, and the group shudders in collective horror. The unspoken message is clear: adapt or be left behind. A social outcast with stale cookies and a shameful lack of color. Coordination in your pantry. Samples are passed around, each container examined like a rare artifact. You are expected to ooh and ah, to squeeze the sides and pop the tops, even if you're quietly thinking that your old glass jars work just fine. There's always at least one woman, usually Mrs. Miller, who asks detailed, probing questions about stackability, dishwasher safety, and whether the autumn maize will match her drapes. She is both admired and feared, for she has mastered the subtle art of competitive homemaking. Soon, the order forms appear, thinly disguised as innocent little pieces of paper. Here's where alliances are formed and reputations made. You glance at your friend's sheet, trying to gauge whether you can get away with just a small mixing bowl, or if you're socially obligated to buy the entire starter set to avoid being talked about for the next 6 months. The pressure is real, and the Tupperware lady senses your hesitation. She leans in, whispers about limited time offers, and before you know it, you're circling 2 more tumblers and a jello mold you will never use. After the deals are done, it's time for refreshments, coffee, congealed salad, and gossip served in equal measure. The conversation turns to who is hosting next, who's redecorating, and the latest scandal involving the butcher's wife and the milkman's unfortunate moustache. The mood relaxes as everyone unites over shared victories and mutual complaints about husbands who can't find the leftovers, even if they're stored in a fluorescent orange container labeled meatloaf. When you finally leave, order form clutched in hand, you feel both lighter and heavier. Lighter in the wallet, heavier in Tupperware obligations. Your kitchen will soon gleam with new plastic treasures, and you will sleep soundly, knowing you have secured your place. At least for now. In the intricate, endlessly competitive world of suburban domesticity. Because in the 1950s, the Tupperware party isn't just about containers. It's about keeping it together, one burping lid at a time. You return home for a solitary lunch, a moment of peace unless, of course, your neighbor drops by with a casserole and a full report on everyone else's marital woes. The promise of lunch alone in the 1950s is almost mythical. You imagine yourself sitting quietly at the kitchen table, a single beam of sunlight slanting across the checkered linoleum, as you savor half a ham sandwich in the silence. It's a rare pocket of the day when you're not performing, not refereeing, not vacuuming, like a woman possessed. Just you, your thoughts, and the faint, reassuring hum of the refrigerator. This is the dream. But solitude is fragile here. The universe, or at least your street, abhors a vacuum. There's always a knock at the door, or worse, a polite face peering in the window as you take your first bite. Mrs. Ferguson from next door, holding a casserole with the kind of confidence reserved for regional sales managers and Olympic athletes, is here to drop this off. Translation: you're about to receive both sustenance and a comprehensive oral history of her daughter's engagement ring, which may or may not be a cubic zirconia. You welcome her in, smile fixed, fork abandoned. Lunch for one becomes lunch for two, maybe three if Mrs. Ferguson's cousin happens to be just in the neighborhood. The casserole is a mysterious amalgam, cream of mushroom, a hint of despair, and something that might once have been celery. But you eat it gratefully, aware that refusing a neighbor's gift is the social equivalent of setting your own mailbox on fire. As you nibble, conversation unfolds in layers. You learn which marriages are strong. Well, they're still speaking after that wallpaper incident. Which are crumbling. She's been wearing pants to the A and P, can you imagine? And who is on thin ice with the PTA? The gossip flows, thick as the casserole, and you listen, smile, and occasionally nod at the appropriate moments. Your own opinions are kept safely tucked away, wrapped in saran wrap and stored for a less volatile time. If, by chance, your neighbor doesn't appear, lunch alone is its own adventure. You raid the fridge for leftovers, crafting a meal from last night's meatloaf, half a tomato, and 2 olives rescued from the back of the shelf. There's no Instagram to document your creation, only the quiet pride of efficiency. You sit at the table with a magazine, Good Housekeeping, or Ladies' Home Journal, and flip through recipes you'll never make and fashion tips you'll never follow. For a brief, perfect moment, the world is still. But even alone, the to-do list lurks. There are school permission slips to sign, bills to pay, notes to write for the bake sale, and the ever-present spectre of ironing. You eat with one hand and sort laundry with the other. Maybe you take a quick phone call. Yes, Marjorie. I'll bring the punch bowl to the church social. Even in solitude, your time is never truly your own. The house hums with invisible demands, and the ticking clock reminds you that this intermission will end as soon as the school bell rings. Lunch in the 1950s is less a meal and more a meditation. On community, on obligation, on the strange comfort of routine. Whether spent in blissful silence or communal casserole, it's a chance to recharge before the afternoon's second act. You clear your plate, rewrap the leftovers, and take one last sip of cold coffee. Outside, the neighborhood is already stirring. Lawnmowers starting, mail trucks passing, the distant echo of a child's laugh. You rise from the table, solo or otherwise, smoothing your skirt and straightening your posture, fortified by food, friendship, or just a moment's pause. Because in this world, even lunch is never really just lunch. It's a checkpoint, a gossip session, a respite, a ritual. You gather the dishes, check the clock, and know that no matter how you spent it, you'll look back on this half-hour oasis as a small miracle of the everyday. By noon, you're re-cleaning what you already cleaned. Because the greatest threat to your home's reputation is the possibility someone might drop in unannounced and find a single streak on the mirror. There's a unique 1950s anxiety that no modern security system can match. The lurking dread that your doorbell will ring, and on the other side will be Mrs. Miller, clipboard in hand, just dropping by to deliver a recipe and perform a silent forensic analysis of your baseboards. This is why, even after a morning spent vacuuming, polishing, and mopping, you find yourself retracing your steps, sponge in hand, scouring the same surfaces you just conquered. It's a Sisyphean ritual. The dust you wiped from the mantle 2 hours ago has, impossibly, returned. As if it's unionized and working shifts, you walk from room to room, hunting for fingerprints, water rings, or heaven forbid, a lone rogue crumb. Your eyes become microscopic, trained to spot what mere mortals never would. A faint ring on the coffee table, the shadow of a smudge on the fridge, a cushion that has dared to migrate even an inch off-center. In this era, perfection isn't just an aspiration, it's the bare minimum. The mirror in the hallway becomes your white whale. You know, with a kind of supernatural certainty that someone will glance at it and immediately see the single streak you missed. So you spritz, polish, and squint from 5 different angles, inspecting your reflection for both cleanliness and signs of encroaching madness. When the glass finally passes muster, you allow yourself a nod until a child's fingerprint magically appears 2 seconds later, as if summoned by ancient housewife curses. Bathrooms get a second sweep. Towels are fluffed, soap dishes wiped, and you run a critical eye over the toilet seat for any evidence of splatter or sibling sabotage. The guest hand towel is strictly for guests, and you'd sooner declare bankruptcy than allow your own children to use it for actual hand drying. The sink must be spotless, toothpaste blobs banished, and the bath mat aligned with laser precision. You pause to consider the effort to impact ratio, then remember the time Mrs. Ferguson just popped in and spent 10 minutes staring at your grout. The living room receives a similar treatment. Cushions plumped, magazines fanned with mathematical precision, and every lampshade tilted at the scientifically determined pleasant angle. Coffee tables are wiped for the 3rd time, just in case. You realign picture frames, dust the figurines, and rescue a stray penny from under the couch, pocketing it like a badge of honor. A quick glance out the window reveals a suspicious shadow. False alarm, just the mailman. But your heart skips a beat anyway. If you have a moment left, you attack the kitchen. Counters are wiped again, dishes stacked with Tetris-like finesse, and the trash discreetly tied up, lest anyone suspect you produce actual garbage. The refrigerator door gets a final polish, because everyone knows surprise guests love to lean on it while sharing news of their second cousin's gallbladder surgery. The floor gets a spot mop, and you double-check the fruit bowl, rearranging the apples so the shiniest ones are on top. Midday. Maintenance isn't really about cleaning, it's about control over your environment, your reputation, and the unspoken scoreboard of suburban perfection. You pause, exhausted, to sip lukewarm coffee, eyeing your handiwork. For a fleeting moment, the house is still, a gleaming monument to the gospel of domesticity. You know it won't last. Someone will burst in with muddy shoes, a rogue dust bunny will emerge from exile, and your neighbor will inevitably drop by. But for now, you've defended your title. The house is clean, possibly cleaner than it was at 8 a.m., and certainly cleaner than anyone would ever admit. You take a breath, smooth your hair, and move on, because in this world, there's no such thing as done. There's only ready for inspection. At last, you allow yourself a break, a cup of instant coffee, and the day's episode of As the World Turns. For 22 minutes, you are transported to a world where other people have the drama and you just have laundry. This is the sacred ritual, part reward, part coping mechanism, that sustains many a 1950s housewife. You perch at the kitchen table or settle onto the sofa, coffee in hand, slippers on, the faint scent of lemon polish still clinging to your apron. The house is briefly, miraculously quiet. Children have been banished to the backyard or off at school, your spouse is safely at the office, and the only sound is the low hum of the television as it flickers to life. The theme song begins, dramatic and soothing in equal measure. For a short, precious span, your world shrinks to the screen and expands into someone else's. The actors, glamorous, troubled, and suspiciously well-dressed for people with so many marital woes, become your secret companions. You sip your coffee and let yourself be swept up in the heartbreaks and betrayals of fictional townsfolk whose greatest problem is whether they married the wrong doctor, not whether there's grape jelly on the curtains. There's an art to this escape. You watch with one eye on the screen and one ear tuned for the doorbell, ready to leap up and rejoin reality should a neighbor appear or a child suddenly need a bandage. It's the ultimate balancing act, keeping up with both the soap opera plotlines and the laundry cycle, both of which threaten to spiral out of control at any moment. The phone might ring, the mailman might arrive, the dog might bark. But for these 22 minutes, you are steadfast, a lighthouse in the emotional storm of daytime television. The storylines are deliciously absurd. Amnesia, secret twins, forbidden love, and a never-ending parade of misunderstandings. No problem is ever solved with a simple conversation. Just like real life, you think, but with more eyeliner and fewer casseroles. You judge, you gasp, you offer silent advice to characters who will never hear it. Don't trust him, Margot. He's not who he says he is. You feel, for a fleeting moment, like you're part of something grand, a community of women across America, all clutching their mugs and rooting for or against the same star-crossed lovers. Soap operas aren't just about entertainment. They are a window into other possibilities, other mistakes, other triumphs. Maybe you envy their wardrobes, their lack of housework, or their apparent immunity to dust. Maybe you just enjoy knowing that no matter how wild your own day gets, nobody has been left at the altar, kidnapped, or revealed to be an evil twin. At least, not yet. As the final commercial jingle plays and the credits roll, you take the last sip of your coffee and stretch. There's a sense of satisfaction, a tiny bubble of relief that the world can be wild, chaotic, even tragic, but for this half hour, you had control. You can shut off the drama and return to your own script, one filled with grocery lists, permission slips, and the comforting predictability of everyday mess. You stand, dusting imaginary crumbs from your lap, and re-enter the fray. The kids will be home soon. The ironing board awaits, and the phone is probably about to ring with an urgent request for 24 cupcakes by tomorrow morning. But for those 22 minutes, you weren't just a housewife. You were an audience, a critic, a co-conspirator in the grand theatre of daytime drama. And tomorrow, when the theme song plays again, you'll be right back here, coffee in hand, ready for your daily sabbatical. Because in the whirlwind of the 1950s, everyone deserves a break, even if it's just until the next commercial. The groceries will not buy themselves. You set out, clutching coupons, handbag, and a steely resolve. Everyone is looking, so your lipstick must not smudge, even at the butcher counter. Leaving the house in the 1950s is a high-stakes expedition, not so much a chore as a public performance. You check your reflection one last time, hair smoothed, dress immaculate, pearls carefully clasped, lipstick precisely applied. The house may be chaotic, but you are the portrait of composure, a one-woman parade of domestic grace. The secret code is clear. If you can't do it well, at least do it beautifully. The first stop, the grocery store, a place where reputations are made and lost in the bread aisle. You scan your shopping list, meticulously crafted and cross-checked against the latest coupons clipped from magazines. Coupons are your secret weapons, proof of thrift and evidence that you're wise to the ways of household economics. You navigate the aisles with the practiced efficiency of a field general, knowing exactly when to splurge, fresh ground coffee, a box of Ritz crackers, and when to hold the line, canned peas again. Well, it's war. The produce section is a gauntlet. You pick through apples, sniff cantaloupes, and scrutinize tomatoes with the intensity of a crime scene investigator. There's a fine line between firm and not quite ripe, and you intend to walk it. At every turn, familiar faces nod, exchange pleasantries, and, of course, subtly inspect your shopping cart for evidence of culinary ambition or laziness. The art of grocery shopping in the 1950s is equal parts nutrition and PR. And then, the butcher counter, a social arena where only the strong, or at least the well-prepared, survive. You smile at the butcher, engaging in light banter about pork chops and pot roast while maintaining perfect posture and an unbroken lipstick line. This is a dance, and everyone knows the steps. You feign dismay over the rising price of beef, knowing full well that Mrs. Ferguson, 2 spots behind you, is taking notes for her next phone call. You accept your wrapped package with a smile and a silent prayer that nothing leaks through the paper before you reach the car. Next, perhaps the bakery, where you eye the fresh bread, debating whether to splurge on something crusty and artisanal or stick to sandwich loaves that last a full week. A brief detour to the dairy section for milk and butter. And finally, a quick scan for sales on staples like flour, sugar, or, if you're feeling fancy, gelatin in a new, alarming color. All the while, you keep your chin up, your answers bright, and your pearls perfectly visible. If anyone in the store thinks you look tired, you'll never hear the end of it. Errands don't end at groceries. You might drop by the dry cleaner to retrieve your spouse's shirts. Starch level, severe, perhaps a visit to the pharmacy, where the pharmacist nods approvingly at your choice of toothpaste. You stop at the post office, exchanging pleasantries and pretending you didn't see that Mrs. Miller's electric bill envelope was upside down. These are all carefully orchestrated moments in the daily ballet of neighborhood life, where every outing is equal parts necessity and social checkpoint. By the time you return home, arms loaded and lipstick miraculously intact, you're tired but triumphant. The pantry will be full, the dinner plan will be in motion, and crucially, your reputation remains unblemished. You unload the bags, smooth your dress, and glance at the clock, already planning the next sortie. Because in the world of the 1950s housewife, even grocery shopping is a performance. One where the world is your stage, your neighbors are your critics, and your pearls are your armor. You may only be buying bread and butter, but you're also buying time, peace, and a little bit of respect in the ever-turning carousel of suburban life. Dinner prep begins before lunch is even digested. What can you make with 2 cans of soup, leftover ham, and something in the back of the fridge that might have been cheese? The possibilities are endless. The appetites are not. Casseroles are the unsung heroes, and sometimes the unidentifiable villains of the 1950s kitchen. They are both a creative exercise and a survival strategy, designed to stretch $1, a leftover, and the boundaries of good taste. You open the pantry and gaze upon your arsenal. Cream of mushroom soup, elbow macaroni, canned peas, and the ever-present, vaguely alarming pimentos. It's less a meal and more an edible experiment, a chance to play culinary roulette where the only certainty is that dinner will be hot and probably beige. You start by assembling your base. The rules of casserole construction are simple. Something starchy, something creamy, something salty, and something, in theory, that once grew on a vine or ran through a field. Last night's ham, diced into heroic little cubes, is joined by a cup of macaroni, boiled until just past al dente, and squarely into the land of structurally questionable. Into the pot goes the soup, a thick, gloppy marvel of modern food science, promising to bind everything together with the power of sodium and nostalgia. The cheese, whatever it is, whatever color it has become, is bravely shredded and mixed in, lending the entire concoction a tang of mystery and a hope that it will, once baked, develop that all-important golden crust. You sprinkle breadcrumbs or crumbled potato chips on top for texture, and maybe toss on a handful of frozen peas for color, as if to reassure the family that, yes, this meal contains actual vegetables. You don't remember when casseroles became synonymous with balanced diet, but you suspect it was around the time someone discovered how to hide lima beans under melted cheddar. As you stir, you're reminded that every casserole has a secret ingredient: improvisation. The recipe might call for sour cream, but you're fresh out, so mayonnaise steps in like an understudy who learned all the wrong lines. If you're feeling bold, you might add a splash of Worcestershire sauce or a suspiciously retro packet of onion soup mix. Spices are less about flavor and more about hope. A pinch of paprika or a dash of pepper is enough to keep things interesting and your family guessing. The finished dish is transferred to your trusty Pyrex, a vessel as indestructible as your optimism. You slide it into the oven, set the timer, and wipe your hands with the weary pride of someone who just MacGyvered dinner out of the least promising parts of the refrigerator. The aroma that soon fills the kitchen is oddly comforting. Salty, starchy, and reminiscent of every potluck you've ever attended. It's a scent that signals, if nothing else, that dinner will be ready on time and that nobody will leave the table hungry. And then comes the unveiling. You serve the casserole with a flourish, hoping the golden crust distracts from the slightly alarming texture beneath. The family gathers, spoons poised, eyes wary. The first bite is met with a mixture of relief and resignation. It's hot, it's filling, and it's almost certainly better than last Thursday's tuna surprise. Someone might ask, "What's in this?" But you respond only with a mysterious smile and a gentle eat before it gets cold. Casseroles are more than food. They're the edible embodiment of the 1950s housewives' creativity, thrift, and sheer determination. They're proof that you can make something from almost nothing, that a meal doesn't have to be perfect to be loved, and that sometimes the best ingredient is simply making do. As you clear the plates and contemplate tomorrow's mystery, you take comfort in the knowledge that, in a world of uncertainty, there will always be another casserole waiting to be invented. The kids burst in after school, shedding shoes, coats, and emotional baggage. You must referee, mediate, and ensure at least one of them does their homework and no one eats the glue. If the morning was a slow boil, the hours after 3 p.m. are a full rolling thunderstorm. The front door swings open with all the subtlety of a tornado siren, and suddenly the peace of your mid-afternoon routine is shattered by a tidal wave of noise, snack requests, and unidentifiable smells. Shoes are flung with Olympic enthusiasm, coats dropped in a trail from the doorway to the nearest chair, and the backpack, oh, the backpack, emptied in the middle of the living room like a piñata full of paperwork, sandwich crusts, and what may be the lost homework assignment from last September. Your first job, triage. Who is crying? Who is fighting? And who has brought home a very important note from the teacher that's been marinating in the bottom of a lunchbox for a week? You move with practiced speed, separating siblings who are locked in mortal combat over a comic book, retrieving a math sheet before it gets colored with jam, and extracting a mysterious substance from someone's hair. You've become part detective, part field medic, and part United Nations peacekeeper. The after-school snack ritual is its own minor production. You field a barrage of preferences and demands. Can I have peanut butter crackers? Do we have cookies? Is there any gel? Oh, left? Someone always wants something you don't have, and someone else always wants what you do, just not the crusty part. You serve up apple slices, saltines, or, if the stars align, the last square of leftover brownies. Each plate is carefully portioned, not out of nutritional science but in the hope of avoiding a snack-based mutiny. Now comes the homework gauntlet. One child insists he doesn't have any. Another has so much it could only have been assigned as punishment for a crime against humanity. You direct traffic at the kitchen table. Pencils are found, erasers rescued from under the fridge, and the search for the sacred glue stick begins anew. You supervise spelling lists, untangle subtraction problems, and attempt to explain why show your work doesn't mean scribble on the back of your hand. Every so often, you catch someone trying to sneak the dog a piece of construction paper or attempting to taste test the paste. You intervene with the resigned authority of someone who's seen this before and will, without a doubt, see it again. Meanwhile, emotional baggage is also unpacked. Someone's best friend hates them forever. Until tomorrow, someone else lost a mitten, had a bad hair day, or got picked last for kickball. You listen, soothe, and dispense sage advice with the gentle touch of a psychologist and the efficiency of a short-order cook. You patch up skinned knees, mediate arguments, and field questions about why exactly fractions are necessary in the modern world. As the chaos swirls, you keep an eye on the clock and the rising pile of paper on the kitchen counter. Permission slips appear, requiring 3 signatures and a check for $1.50. The school newsletter materializes, full of upcoming opportunities for parent involvement that sound suspiciously like unpaid labor. The dog starts barking at invisible intruders. Someone tries to sneak another snack, and the doorbell rings just as you finally locate the missing shoe. In this post-school whirlwind, you are everywhere and nowhere at once, a fixer, a comforter, a rule enforcer, and a champion of surviving to dinner time with at least some portion of your sanity intact. When the dust settles and the homework is more or less finished, you breathe a sigh of relief, knowing you've won another round. And as you sweep up the crumbs, gather the shoes, and prepare for the next act, otherwise known as dinner, you marvel that anyone ever said Housewives had it easy. Because every afternoon, as the children return, so does the reminder. Chaos is just another word for family. And you are its brave and slightly frazzled general. You're now a tutor, therapist, and professional finder of lost things. Algebra, missing socks, existential fears about spelling bees, you field it all with a straight face and an increasingly unhinged smile. Welcome to the next shift, which, like most things in the life of a 1950s housewife, starts not with a whistle but with a child asking, "Mom, what's a gerund?" while simultaneously losing their left shoe, their homework, and, possibly, their grip on reality. You take your seat at the kitchen table, red pencil in one hand, cup of tepid coffee in the other, ready for a barrage of questions ranging from the simple, "Is Pluto a planet?" to the philosophical, "Why do we have to learn fractions if Dad never uses them?" Each query is an opportunity for teaching, patience, and sometimes creative fibbing. Homework time is a delicate operation. Part military campaign, part hostage negotiation. One child is furiously erasing holes into their spelling list. Another is drawing pirates on their math worksheet. And a third has decided that now is the perfect time to practice the clarinet, loudly in the next room. Your job is to create order from chaos, keeping everyone focused without losing your own tenuous grasp on the difference between acute and obtuse angles. Of course, the questions never stop at schoolwork. Where's my green notebook? Have you seen my permission slip? Why is my gym sock wet? You develop a sixth sense for locating lost items, often finding them in places that defy logic and the known laws of physics. Shoes in the freezer, pencils in the bathroom cabinet, lunchboxes inexplicably stashed behind the couch. You perform these feats without applause, knowing that the moment you return one item, Another will vanish. The law of conservation of missing objects cannot be broken. Amid all this, you field emotional emergencies with the finesse of a seasoned therapist. Someone is devastated by a mediocre quiz grade. Someone else fears public humiliation in the upcoming spelling bee. You offer pep talks, hugs, and, when all else fails, cookies. You assure them that everyone makes mistakes, that nobody remembers the kid who forgot how to spell rhubarb, and that life will, somehow, go on. It's emotional triage, performed with a calm voice and eyes that flicker occasionally toward the Proust, hidden stash of aspirin. Sibling rivalries also flare up. Homework becomes a competitive sport. Who finishes first? Who got the hardest worksheet? Who gets to use the good eraser? Arguments are arbitrated, tears are dried, and you find yourself threatening to call the principal, Santa Claus, or both if peace isn't restored. At some point, someone inevitably declares, "I wish I were an only child," which, in your house, is code for "I need a snack." As the minutes tick by, you become aware that you are not only managing education, but also orchestrating the emotional tone of the household. If one child melts down, the others are sure to follow. If you lose your patience, the whole evening unravels. You perform a careful balancing act, stern but kind, encouraging but realistic, always with a wry joke or a gentle nudge to keep spirits afloat. When the last equation is solved and the final flashcard put away, you breathe a quiet sigh of relief. The kitchen table is littered with pencil, shavings, and sticky notes. But you've navigated another session of homework and emotional labor. With only a slight twitch developing in your left eye, you gather the materials, return the textbooks to backpacks, and promise yourself a treat for surviving the ordeal, maybe a secret square of chocolate, or a moment of solitude in the laundry room, because in the world of the 1950s housewife, your resume includes algebra coach, motivational speaker, and master of lost and found. It's not on any job description, but without you, the entire system would collapse in a heap of tears, eraser dust, and mismatched socks. Dinner is less a meal and more a small theatrical production. There are courses, place settings, and an implicit review process involving everyone at the table and, possibly, your mother-in-law via phone. The curtain rises at precisely 6 p.m. when you announce, loudly enough for even the dog to hear, that dinner is served. Everyone assembles with varying degrees of enthusiasm, drawn by the aroma of something cheesy, creamy, or, if it's Friday, slathered in canned pineapple. The dining room, meticulously set earlier, now shines under the watchful gaze of a floral centerpiece, matching napkins, and your best attempt at candlelight ambience, provided the kids haven't snapped the candles in half during homework. Act 1. The grand entrance. The first course arrives. Perhaps a tidy little salad crowned with precisely 6 croutons. You place bowls before your family with a flourish worthy of a maitre d', the opening scene in tonight's domestic opera. There's a choreography to the seating. Your spouse at the head, children along the flanks, all eyes momentarily hopeful and slightly suspicious. The dog lurks beneath the table, ready to pounce on any dropped green bean. Polite conversation begins, usually prompted by you. How was school? How was work? Answers range from fine to I forget, punctuated by clattering forks and the occasional existential sigh. Your spouse may mention the news or something from the office. They're thinking of getting a new water cooler, while the children, if not too hungry, might recount the day's scandals. Who broke the hopscotch record? Who got a star sticker? Who said a bad word and is definitely grounded until college? Act 2. The main event. The casserole makes its grand entrance, golden and bubbling, flanked by side dishes arranged with the precision of military maneuvers. Potatoes, mashed, scalloped, or baked within an inch of their life, are ladled onto plates. Green beans, possibly from a can, possibly enhanced with a generous amount of butter and salt, add the requisite color and nutritional deniability. Rolls are passed, and the butter dish does a slow waltz around the table. You serve, deflecting complaints. Why is there celery in here? Is this cheese or just optimism? With a serene smile and an invitation to just try a bite. You keep one ear tuned for the 12 subtle cues of approval, a second helping, a compliment about the crust, or, if you're truly lucky, silence punctuated only by chewing. Of course, there's also the offstage critic, your mother-in-law, who may call during dessert to inquire about the menu and offer her unsolicited recipe for real gravy. Act 3. The finale. Dessert is your curtain call. Maybe it's a wobbly jello mold or a square of homemade brownies. The family's mood lifts as sugar hits their systems. Stories flow more freely, and laughter bubbles up, sometimes at your expense, especially if the mashed potatoes achieved escape velocity earlier. Dishes are cleared, the table wiped, and the kitchen transformed from stage to disaster area. As the family disperses, you survey the aftermath. Crumbs, dropped napkins, and a small tidal wave of peas hiding beneath the radiator. Throughout the meal, your performance has been seamless. Hostess, chef, conversationalist, and culinary diplomat. You've fielded reviews, both glowing, "This is delicious," and devastating, "Can I have cereal instead?" With the poise of someone who knows tomorrow's dinner will be another act entirely. In the wings, you steel yourself for the standing ovation that never comes, just a quiet house and a mountain of dishes waiting in the sink. Because dinner in the 1950s isn't just about food, it's about keeping the family together, upholding tradition, and ensuring everyone leaves the table a little bit fuller. And maybe, just maybe, ready to face another day. The critics will return, the reviews will keep coming, but tonight, you close the curtain on another successful performance. After dinner, the kitchen returns to chaos, and you to the trenches. Scrape, soak, stack, repeat, because nothing says relaxation like soaking your hands in a broth of mystery crumbs. No sooner does the last fork clink against a plate than the true magnitude of the dinner aftermath reveals itself. The dining table, recently in the stage of your finest casserole performance, is now a casualty zone. Plates are stacked in teetering piles. Serving bowls congeal with a strange pudding-like gravity, and napkins, so recently pressed and folded, resemble the aftermath of a small but determined hurricane. The family makes a hasty retreat, scattering in all directions. Suddenly, nobody can hear you ask for help with the dishes. Even the dog vanishes, knowing instinctively that kitchen duty is the only fate worse than being dressed as a bumblebee for Halloween. So, you roll up your sleeves and begin the second act of the nightly cleaning marathon. The ritual begins with the great scrape, removing bits of baked-on cheese, fugitive peas, and an unidentified object that could be either a chunk of ham or a science experiment gone rogue. Each plate tells a story, a stubborn crust here, a suspiciously untouched vegetable there. Every scrape is a reminder of both your hard work and the unending nature of the dinner cycle. Now, it's time to fill the sink. You run hot water until the room steams like a Turkish bath. Add a generous squirt of lemon-scented detergent and summon the willpower of 1,000 generations. Into the suds go the plates, bowls, cups, and cutlery, each sinking with a satisfying plop. You attack the pans first, wielding the scrub brush like a medieval knight might handle a broadsword. Stuck on sauce? A worthy foe. Burned bits at the bottom of the casserole dish? That's what elbow grease and possibly gentle cursing were invented for. Washing dishes in the 1950s is both meditation and manual labor. There is a certain rhythm to it. Scrub, rinse, stack, repeat. The bubbles provide momentary distraction, sparkling in the fading kitchen light. You drift for a second into idle daydream of a world where dishwashers are as common as toasters, or where children line up, eager to help. Then a glob of something unidentifiable floats by, and you snap back to reality, valiantly fishing it out and pretending not to wonder if it's been classified by the FDA. Once the dishes are clean, or clean enough by 1950 standards, you set them on the rack to dry, plates upright, glasses inverted, silverware carefully sorted so nobody gets stabbed reaching for a spoon. Towels come next, and you polish each plate as if Martha Stewart herself were peering through your window. Any spot or streak is a mark against your reputation, so you buff until the china glows, like the hope you once had of a quick after-dinner nap. Of course, there's always the floor to contend with. Rogue crumbs, spilled milk, maybe a mashed green bean from Act 2 of Dinner as Theatre. You sweep, mop, and finally hang the dish towel with a flourish. Only then, with the kitchen restored to its gleaming, guest-ready glory, do you allow yourself a quiet moment of satisfaction. You gaze at your handiwork and wonder how long it will last, statistically, about 37 minutes. In this nightly ballet of dishwashing and damage control, you are both soloist and chorus. It's not glamorous, but there's a strange, defiant pride in bringing order from chaos, in restoring a sense of peace to your kitchen before the next onslaught, because you know, as every 1950s housewife knows, that the parade will roll again tomorrow, and you'll be ready, dish towel in hand, to lead it. As the family disperses, your spouse requires debriefing about his day, the news, the stock market, and whether the neighbors have finally fixed their fence. You nod, smile, and stash away the latest rumor for future use. The post-dinner routine is not, as outsiders might suspect, a time for relaxation. It's the official start of the daily husband debrief, a ritual equal parts performance review, intelligence briefing, and cozy fireside chat. Minus the fire, plus a lot of quiet multitasking, the couch becomes mission control. He settles in, tie loosened, slippers on, the evening paper unfolded like a diplomat's dossier. You take your position nearby, coffee cup in hand, ready for another round of supportive listening. He begins with headlines, as if reading them aloud somehow makes them more real. Markets up today. Johnson says the office might get a new vending machine. You react appropriately. A mild "oh" for neutral news, a practiced "really" for small triumphs, and the ever diplomatic. That's interesting when the subject veers into office politics, which are just as complicated and unresolvable as playground politics, but with fewer snack breaks. You are expected to absorb, analyze, and respond, often while simultaneously folding laundry, making a grocery list, and telepathically communicating with the dog to please stop licking the carpet. The challenge is to appear fully present, even as your mind flickers through all the things left undone. The children's bath, tomorrow's lunches, whether you remembered to take the Jell-O out of the fridge. Still, you nod and with admirable commitment, careful to offer a reassuring smile or a sympathetic frown at just the right moments. Now comes the neighborhood news. Who is painting their shutters? Who let their lawn go brown? And who, rumor has it, might be buying a boat they absolutely can't afford? You stow these tidbits away, careful not to repeat anything that could cause an international incident at the next PTA meeting. Every neighborhood has its own intricate diplomatic dance. And you, unofficially, are both ambassador and chief intelligence officer. Sometimes, he'll ask about your day, a question you answer with the highlights reel. The laundry was mountainous. The kids are still alive. And Mrs. Ferguson dropped by to discuss the existential meaning of cream of mushroom soup. You both chuckle, united briefly in the knowledge that suburban life, for all its monotony, is never truly boring. The debrief continues as he works his way through the paper, sometimes reading aloud an article about new cars, advances in space travel, or the ongoing Cold War. You listen with the same care you reserve for the children's stories, filtering out the background static and catching the parts that might actually matter. On occasion, you'll chime in with your own piece of gossip, a comment on the neighbors, or a story from the grocery store. It's a quiet exchange, a way to stitch together the day's events, to keep the world outside at a manageable distance. And yes, sometimes the conversation drifts to the existential dreams for the future, frustrations at work, or a passing thought about whether anyone ever truly fixes their fence. These are the moments where the lines between spouse, confidant, and teammate blur, reminders that the partnership of marriage is built not just on grand gestures, but on the small, nightly habit of sharing and listening. By the time the coffee's gone cold and the paper is set aside, the house feels a little quieter, to a little more secure. He'll stretch, declare his intention to turn in soon, and you'll gather the last of the mugs and slip into the kitchen. Another debrief complete, another day survived. In a world that demands order, control, and relentless cheerfulness, you've managed to provide one safe harbor, one place where everyone, even the breadwinner, can put their feet up and let the day fall away. You exhale knowing tomorrow will bring another news cycle, another batch of neighborhood drama, and another round of debriefs. But for tonight you've done your job, silent, steady, and always listening. Now you must bathe the children, a process involving soap, shrieking, and the Sisyphean pursuit of clean pajamas that still fit. The clock strikes bath o'clock, and suddenly, the entire house shifts into a different kind of chaos. Bath time is the nightly ritual where your authority as a parent is put to its greatest test, and the kids' creativity reaches its peak, usually in the service of evasion. The mere suggestion of getting undressed and heading to the tub is met with a chorus of protests, sudden thirst, urgent existential questions. Why is water wet? And the kind of despair usually reserved for classical operas. You take a deep breath and summon the spirit of every parent who has ever chased a naked child down a hallway. Wrangling the kids into the bathroom is a feat of logistics worthy of military commendation. One is hiding under the bed, another has become inexplicably sticky, and the third is making a last stand atop the living room couch, wielding a toy sword and demanding just 5 more minutes. You negotiate, you bribe, you threaten, sometimes all at once. Eventually, the herd is corralled into the steamy, echoing confines of the bathroom, where the real battle begins. Into the tub they go, amid a flurry of complaints about water temperature, elbow room, and the ongoing feud over who gets the good rubber duck. Soap is dispensed, often with the subtlety of a snowstorm, and bubbles bloom like a cartoon volcano. Someone tries to create a bubble beard. Someone else invents a new game involving splashing water over the edge. And you stand by with a towel, equal parts referee and janitor, mentally calculating whether the grout will survive tonight's onslaught. You begin the routine. hair wash, face scrub, ears checked with maternal precision for traces of playground dirt or last week's glitter. Shampoo gets in eyes, tears are shed, and a negotiation breaks out over who gets to use the dinosaur washcloth. There are shrieks, giggles, and enough spilled water to flood a small nation. Bath time is both an endurance event and a comedy sketch, starring you as the harried straight man trying to enforce hygiene in a world that prizes chaos. Getting them clean is only half the mission. The other half is finding pajamas that A, match, B, fit, and C, are not currently inside the dog's bed. Children grow at a pace that seems designed to mock your shopping skills. You root through drawers, coming up with options that were perfect last week, but now expose an ankle or threaten to cut off circulation at the wrist. Finally, everyone is dry, dressed, more or less, and smelling faintly of lavender and victory. But the struggle is not over. Wet towels appear everywhere except the laundry basket, toothbrushes become weapons, and the floor is now a slip and slide featuring soap, washcloths, and one rogue Lego. There is a last-minute dash for a favorite stuffed animal or blanket, without which sleep is apparently impossible. You manage the chaos with a steady hand and a resigned smile, knowing that tonight's battle will be reenacted with minor variations tomorrow. As you shepherd your freshly scrubbed, but still squirming, offspring from bathroom to bedroom, you perform one last head count, double-check ears, and do a quick prayer for a night free of midnight water requests. Bath time, in all its noisy, messy, exhausting glory, is complete. You turn off the bathroom light and close the door on puddles, towels, and a job well done. For a moment, the house is quiet. You survived another round of bubbles and battles, and the children, miraculously, are clean, in pajamas, and just a few stories away from sleep. You pause, exhale, and prepare for the next act, the epic bedtime negotiation. In the ongoing saga of 1950 parenthood, bath time is less about soap and more about love, patience, and the hard-won knowledge that clean children, no matter how briefly, are a triumph worth savoring. Tucked in with a story, a glass of water, and at least 3 extra trips to the bathroom, your children negotiate their way through bedtime with the stamina of trained lawyers. It's the final act of the nightly routine, the one that's supposed to be sweet, gentle, and heartwarming, but often feels more like a diplomatic summit crossed with a wrestling match. You gather your freshly scrubbed, pajama-clad children into their beds, smoothing the sheets and plumping the pillows as if preparing royalty for sleep. On the nightstand sits a stack of well-loved books, a glass of water, and the unspoken understanding that bedtime is only the beginning of the end. You open the book, carefully modulating your voice for maximum drama, because a good bedtime story requires a full emotional range, from booming giants to whispering mice. The kids hang on every word, at least for the first 3 pages, before someone interrupts to ask why dragons can't live in your backyard, or whether dogs have dreams, or why it's impossible to fall asleep without the red blanket. Even though last week it was the blue one, you answer patiently, a one-person, frequently asked questions, seamlessly weaving together fairy tale logic and the laws of physics. Story time finished, you move on to the first round of negotiations. I need to use the bathroom. Can I have another drink of water? My leg is itchy. I forgot to brush my teeth. Each plea is delivered with the earnestness of a child who truly believes sleep is a rare and dangerous phenomenon. You gently shepherd them back into bed, smoothing sheets and giving hugs, offering assurances that yes, the nightlight is on, and no, there are absolutely no monsters under the bed, unless you count stray socks and the occasional dust bunny. Next comes the marathon of stall tactics. Someone suddenly remembers an urgent need to discuss dinosaurs, or confesses a deeply philosophical question about why people have to sleep at all. But what if I have a dream I don't like? they ask, lower lip trembling. Can you stay until I fall asleep? You negotiate terms. 5 more minutes, one more story. A song, if everyone stays quiet. Your repertoire expands nightly. Lullabies, nursery rhymes. Original compositions improvised in the hope that repetition will induce drowsiness. But bedtime in the 1950s isn't just about soothing children to sleep. It's about creating a sense of safety, warmth, and predictability in a world that can feel large and confusing. You tuck them in tightly, making sure favorite stuffed animals stand sentry at their sides, ready to battle nightmares or, at the very least, provide moral support until dawn. The soft glow of the hallway light filters in as you whisper the last good night and tiptoe toward the door. Of course, escape is rarely swift. Someone calls you back. Another question. A request for a different pillow. A complaint that their toe feels weird. You return, fix the covers, offer another kiss, and whisper that you'll be just down the hall. This small promise, more than anything else, is what finally brings a sense of calm. As their breathing slows and eyelids begin to flutter, you finally let yourself exhale. You leave the room on tiptoe, closing the door with the delicacy of a safecracker. For a moment, the house is silent, peaceful, except for the distant hum of the television and the faint sound of the icebox. You know it won't last. Someone will call out for you before you've even finished putting away the storybooks. But for now, you've shepherded your flock through another day, navigating bedtime with the grace, patience, and negotiation skills of a seasoned statesman. In the end, bedtime is not just a battle for sleep. It's a nightly act of love, a testament to endurance, and proof that no matter how tired you are, there's always room for one more hug, one more story, and, inevitably, one last trip to the bathroom. Once everyone's asleep, you survey the home. The living room is straightened, the laundry folded, the kitchen restored to its original unnatural state of purity. You allow yourself 5 minutes to stare at the wall. It's nearly midnight, and the house is at last quiet. A peace so rare and fragile, you're almost afraid to breathe too loudly. You walk from room to room in your slippers, making final rounds like a night watchman in a museum, preserving the delicate balance between order and chaos. The sofa pillows are fluffed and realigned for the 3rd time today. The rug is smoothed, magazine stacks squared away, and the television turned off, its last flickering image fading into darkness. For a moment, you simply exist, suspended between the day that was and the day that's already sneaking up behind you. In the kitchen, the counters are wiped, crumbs hunted down and eliminated, and the coffee pot set up for the next morning's pre-dawn campaign. The floor shines faintly under the soft glow of the stove light, a beacon of accomplishment in a sea of repetition. The dish towel hangs perfectly. The sink glistens, and even the garbage can is empty. Its fresh liner, a small but potent symbol of victory over entropy. You gather up the last of the day's laundry, folding and stacking each item with ritual precision. It's almost meditative. Shirt, towel, pillowcase, each crisp fold a gentle assertion of control. The smell of clean cotton mingles with the faint traces of soap and starch, a sensory reward for work only you will notice. You return the baskets to their place, satisfied, and remind yourself that even if the family can't see the difference, you can. These few stolen minutes, just for yourself, are precious and fleeting. You settle into your favorite chair, sometimes with a magazine, sometimes with nothing at all, simply allowing your mind to drift. Your thoughts wander from tomorrow's grocery list to the book you haven't finished, to the strange peace that settles over a house full of sleeping bodies and freshly laundered sheets. You might indulge in a square of chocolate or a splash of sherry, a tiny act of rebellion in a world that expects you to be endlessly selfless. It's in these quiet moments that you remember yourself, not just as a wife, a mother, or a mistress of domestic detail, but as a person with your own small hopes, memories, and private jokes. Maybe you catch your own reflection in the window, tousled hair, soft eyes ringed with exhaustion, and the barest smile of triumph. You are still here. The house is still standing. Nothing caught on fire. And that, in the grand scheme, is a win. Outside, the neighborhood is still. Porch lights glow. Cars are tucked in driveways. And the world feels smaller, safer. You wonder if the other women on your block are also awake. Savoring these secret minutes when nobody needs anything, when every demand and expectation is on pause. In this quiet, you are connected by invisible threads, shared exhaustion, pride, and the quiet certainty that, come sunrise, it all begins again. Eventually, your eyelids grow heavy and you rise, placing your cup in the sink with the rest of the day's worries. You turn off the lights one by one, the house falling into shadow, and tiptoe to bed. Tomorrow will bring more chaos, more cleaning, more unexpected challenges, and you'll meet them all with the same mix of humor, resourcefulness, and silent, midnight resolve. Because the true secret of the 1950s housewife isn't just in the spotless counters or folded towels. It's in the ability to carve out a moment of peace, to honor the quiet after the storm, and to reset not just the house, but yourself, for whatever comes next. It's time for self-care, which, in this decade, means cold cream, pin curls, and reading a magazine article titled 10 Ways to Please Your Man and Polish Your Silverware. The children are asleep, the house is quiet, and for the first time in what feels like a century, you have a door you can close. This is the golden hour of the 1950s housewife. Your daily appointment with the mirror, a handful of beauty rituals, and the kind of low-key rebellion that happens with the bathroom door firmly locked. You line up your products on the vanity. A tub of cold cream, a jar of Pond's, a battered tube of red lipstick, and a glass of water for rinsing pin curls. Tonight's beauty regimen is as much about routine as it is about results. You start with cold cream, scooping a dollop onto your fingertips. It's icy and rich, promising to lift away the day's residue, along with any lingering doubts about your worthiness, as both a woman and a custodian of fine cutlery. There's something oddly comforting about smoothing the cream across your face, feeling the tension of the day dissolve with each circular motion. For a few minutes, you're not thinking about PTA meetings or casserole catastrophes, just the soothing coolness, the soft scent, and the gentle assurance that you are, after all, taking care of yourself. Pin curls come next. A nightly construction project requiring patience, dexterity, and more bobby pins than any one person should legally possess. You section your hair, wrap and pin, following the same process your mother taught you and her mother before that. Every curl is a little act of hope for tomorrow. Maybe you'll wake up looking a little less tired, a little more like the cover of Good Housekeeping. It's not about impressing anyone, really. It's about reclaiming a few inches of glamour in a world that demands so much practicality. You slip into your nightgown, maybe frilly, maybe practical, but always clean, and settle into bed with a magazine. The covers are glossy. The promise is outlandish. One headline offers 7 secret beauty tricks every husband will notice. Another brags how to keep your kitchen, your kids, and your sanity sparkling. You flip through the pages, equal parts amused and bemused, noting the tips about lemon juice for elbows and the endless parade of miracle creams. Sometimes, You clip a recipe or a housekeeping hack for your notebook, but mostly, you read to remember that you're not alone. There are millions of women across thousands of towns lying in bed at this exact moment, their faces tingling with menthol and their minds whirring with lists for tomorrow. Maybe you dab a bit of perfume behind your ears, just because. Maybe you reach for the nail file, or paint your toenails a cheerful, defiant pink. For a moment, you put aside the unrelenting demands of mother, wife, daughter, neighbor, and just exist. You remember dreams, some chased, some left behind for now, and you feel, in your own small way, restored. Self-care, in this decade, isn't bubble baths and spa days. It's the 10 quiet minutes with your own reflection. It's the cool rush of lotion, the promise of bouncy curls, the silly quiz about your marriage IQ. It's giving yourself permission to be something other than efficient, practical, and presentable. To be soft, silly, hopeful, or just plain tired. You turn off the light, slide under the covers, and let yourself drift. Tomorrow will be another marathon, but for now, you are simply you, cleansed, curled, content, and ready to rest. Because the real secret to surviving the 1950s isn't found in cold cream or pin curls. It's in the pain, small, stubborn acts of self-care, quiet rituals that remind you that, beneath all the roles you play, you're worthy of kindness. From yourself most of all. The house is quiet, but your mind is not. Did you forget to pack lunch? Did you call the plumber? Did you remember to live? You drift off, eventually, wondering what tomorrow's casserole will be, and if anyone will ever notice the dust behind the TV. There's a special silence that falls over the house at midnight. It's not the silence of completion or satisfaction, but the hush of everyone else finally asleep, leaving you alone with your thoughts and the faint tick of the hallway clock. You lie in bed, one arm outside the covers, the room cool and still, and suddenly the business of living seems to echo louder than ever. All the lists you finished today seem to regenerate in the dark, like laundry, endless, multiplying, and never truly conquered. You scan the room, cataloguing tiny imperfections, the curtain hem that's coming loose, the lamp bulb that's just a little too dim, the shoes in the hallway that never make it to the closet. Your brain chooses this moment to review every unfinished project, every unreturned call, every sock that went missing since 1947. You wonder, fleetingly, if anyone ever notices these things but you, and if they don't, does that mean you can finally let them go? But letting go is harder than it sounds, especially in a world where order and control feel like the last things standing between you and the slow creep of chaos. Your mind replays conversations from the day. Did you say the right thing to the teacher? Was your casserole good enough for the neighbor? Was that sigh your husband gave after dinner about the potatoes or about the fence again? Each thought loops and spirals, blooming into new worries with every minute the clock advances. The practical anxieties come first. Did you pack lunches for the kids? Is there enough bread for breakfast? Or will you have to improvise with crackers and silent apologies? Did you remember to sign the field trip slip? To check the homework folder? To leave a note for the milkman? Was the laundry room door left open for the cat? Or will you be woken at 2 a.m. by yowling and the distinctive sound of glassware shattering? Then, as the practical worries quiet down, the existential ones slip in. Are you a good enough mother, spouse, neighbor? Is the house ever truly clean? Or does dust simply migrate from one corner to another, escaping your best efforts? Do your kids feel safe and loved? Will they remember bedtime stories and home-cooked dinners? Or will their strongest memory be that time you burned the meatloaf? When was the last time you laughed just for yourself? or did something on a whim. You roll over, fluffing the pillow, trying to focus on your breathing. The house is at rest, but you're still negotiating the fine details of tomorrow. Groceries to buy, forms to sign, casseroles to invent. Even as your body aches for sleep, your mind refuses to clock out. The parade of midnight worries is a lonely one, but also strangely universal. You imagine, somewhere down the street, another woman lying awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering if the world will unravel if she doesn't get up and wipe the kitchen counter one more time. Eventually, your thoughts slow, lulled by the comforting repetition of daily rituals and the soft rhythms of the house. The fridge hums, the floorboards settle, a car passes by in the distance. You let your anxieties fade to a low murmur, promising yourself that tomorrow you'll do your best, and that maybe, just maybe, the dust behind the TV can wait another day. Sleep arrives quietly, a truce between exhaustion and responsibility. Tomorrow will come, with new lists, new worries, and undoubtedly another casserole. But for now, you drift, held by the hush of a house that's finally, mercifully, at peace, even if your mind needs a little longer to catch up. Every so often, you're summoned to the school for a PTA meeting, a delicate diplomatic summit where alliances are forged, cookies are judged, and someone inevitably suggests a fun fundraiser that will haunt you for months. The dress code is competitive floral. The mood is tense. The unspoken rule: never show fear when the bake sale assignments are handed out. You prepare for the PTA meeting with the focus and apprehension of someone about to enter a war room, not a multi-purpose room lined with cheerful finger paintings and the faint scent of Elmer's glue. You pick your outfit carefully. A floral print dress just bold enough to signal confidence, pearls to show you mean business, and a handbag with room for at least 3 emergency handkerchiefs. A tray of cookies or brownies is tucked under your arm. Presentation is everything, and you never know when a well-timed pecan bar might save your reputation. The meeting begins promptly at 7 p.m. as a parade of prototode, mothers, and the occasional brave father files into the folding chairs, eyeing one another with the wary respect of seasoned chess players. The principal calls the meeting to order, and for the next hour, you are a diplomat, strategist, and secret agent, all in one. You take mental notes on who's sitting where, who brought what, and which cookies are getting the most compliments. Hierarchies emerge not from titles but from whispered alliances, side-eye glances, and the ability to organize a bake sale without crying. The first order of business is always the minutes from the last meeting. You nod solemnly, pretending to remember what was decided last month. Something about new playground mulch, something about the spring dance, and something, always, about budget shortfalls. Someone proposes a new fundraiser, car wash, chili cook-off, or, most dreaded of all, the fun run. You hold your breath as the idea is discussed, knowing that the word volunteer will soon echo through the room like a challenge from a game show host. Then come the committee assignments. You try to look busy, leafing through your notepad, but it's no use. The eyes of the fundraising chair scan the room like searchlights. You smile tightly, calculating how many ways you can say "I'm happy to help" without getting assigned to chair the whole event. It's a high-stakes game, and you pray the gods of light duty are feeling merciful. Alas, your name is called for the bake sale. Again, you nod graciously, mentally recalculating your flour reserves and reminding yourself to avoid the peanut butter cookie controversy from last year. As business proceeds, conversation flows in undercurrents. Who's had words with the art teacher? Whose child was disruptive at last week's assembly? There's a running commentary about new families, old feuds, and who makes the best lemon bars. You participate with measured enthusiasm, careful to be supportive, but never too enthusiastic, lest you be volunteered for yet another subcommittee. Cookies are judged, both silently and aloud. Someone's brownies are too gooey. Someone else's snickerdoodles are suspiciously store-bought. You offer compliments with the diplomatic grace of an ambassador. Behind every smile is the knowledge that, in this room, reputations rise and fall on the fluffiness of a scone. When the meeting finally adjourns, you exhale with relief. You survived the gauntlet. You leave with a new stack of flyers to distribute, a list of phone numbers for the bake sale, and at least one clandestine invitation to grab coffee and compare notes later in the week. As you drive home, you marvel at the strange, complicated dance of PTA politics, a world where the stakes are higher than they appear, and the social maneuvering is as intricate as any soap opera, because in the end, the PTA isn't just about fundraising and cookies, it's about community, pride, and the enduring truth that, in every school, the real work gets done after hours by a handful of exhausted women in competitive florals, carrying trays of cookies and the weight of the world's next fun event. The mailbox is both friend and foe. Each day, you approach it with hope. A letter from Aunt Mabel, a magazine with a recipe for elegant aspic, and dread, bills, more bills, and a mysterious catalogue for garden gnomes. You stand in your driveway, sorting envelopes and existential crises, wondering if anyone will ever write just because. In the daily rhythms of 1950s suburbia, the trip to the mailbox is a ritual imbued with suspense, optimism, and the faint tinge of dread. The path from your front door to the curb is both literal and metaphorical, a brief solo stroll across the carefully trimmed lawn, eyes flicking up and down the block to see if any neighbors are watching. You smooth your skirt, check your hair, and try to project the image of someone who is unfazed by whatever news might be lurking behind the shiny metal lid. You open the mailbox, heart doing a small leap, hoping for a handwritten envelope with an unfamiliar return address, a surprise letter, maybe a birthday card you forgot was coming, or, if the universe is smiling, a check from that long-lost relative who finally hit oil in Oklahoma. But most days, it's a combination of utility bills, department store flyers, and a catalogue for products you can't imagine anyone needing. Garden gnome, now with realistic eyebrows. Still, you flip through the stack with the reverence of an archaeologist uncovering the secrets of a lost civilization. Some days bring real treasures. A letter from Aunt Mabel, written in her spidery hand, full of family gossip and questionable recipes. Try gelatin with tuna, very modern. There might be a postcard from a traveling friend, a school newsletter, or, best of all, a magazine, thick with the promise of new recipes, beauty tips, and aspirational living room furniture. You clutch these small joys to your chest, a reminder that there is a world outside your four walls, filled with stories, trends, and the comforting knowledge that at least someone is thinking of you. But just as often, the mailbox is a bringer of woes. The electric bill arrives, heavier than last month, and the water bill follows close behind, mocking your dreams of a backyard swimming pool. There's a letter from the bank, never good news, and, inevitably, a note from the PTA, reminding you that you have been voluntarily signed up to coordinate the next bake sale. You sigh, already planning your grocery list for 3 dozen cupcakes and an emergency pie. Among the routine paperwork, there are always surprises. Sometimes it's a catalogue advertising impossibly cheerful kitchen curtains. Sometimes it's an invitation to a wedding or a church social. And sometimes, if you're truly unlucky, It's an ad for burial plots, complete with free pen. You stand in your driveway, fanning the mail like a deck of cards, sorting the urgent from the ignorable, the personal from the painfully practical. As you walk back to the house, you let yourself daydream. Wouldn't it be nice if, just once, the mailbox held a letter just because? Not an invitation, not a bill, not a catalogue for gnome accessories, but a simple note from someone who wanted to say hello, to check in, to remind you that you are remembered outside of carpool lists and casserole exchanges. You make a mental note to send a letter to your cousin next week. Maybe start a chain of just because that ripples through your own circle. Back inside, you lay the stack of mail on the kitchen counter, sorting bills into the deal with soon pile, stashing the catalogue for a quiet evening's laugh, and tucking Aunt Mabel's letter beside the recipe box for safekeeping. The battle with the mailbox is ongoing. Part of the daily dance of domesticity, a mix of hopes, chores, and surprises that never quite loses its power to thrill or disappoint. In the end, you find comfort in the ritual, because every day the mailbox holds the potential for news, for joy, for a little bit of connection. And every day you return, willing to take on the battle again, one letter, one bill, one hopeful trip at a time. Nothing tests your reflexes like the doorbell ringing at 2 p.m. Suddenly, it's a full-scale crisis. Teacups out, lipstick reapplied, and a mad dash to hide the evidence of real life. The pile of toys, the experimental gel. Oh, behind throw pillows. Your smile must be as fresh as the coffee. Never mind that you've just wrestled a dust bunny the size of a Pomeranian. The 1950s housewife lives with a low-level, ever-present dread of the unannounced visitor. The neighborhood runs on a currency of pop-ins, drop-bys, and, "Oh, I was just in the area." Each one is a potential social minefield, part performance, part disaster response. The first chime of the doorbell is like the starter's pistol at the Olympics. You spring into action, slippers flying, mind already scanning the perimeter for everything that looks too real, too lived in, too "please don't judge me by the state of my linoleum." The drill is precise. First, you stash any evidence of chaos. Socks under cushions, coloring books into the nearest drawer, cereal bowls hidden in the oven. Toys are whisked off the rug and tossed behind the sofa. Laundry baskets are shoved into closets with a prayer that nothing will avalanche when you later retrieve them. You do a lightning-fast scan for rogue crumbs, rogue children, and that experimental jello mold you swore you'd never let another human see. For good measure, you rearrange the fruit bowl so the freshest apples are on top and the bananas are, at minimum, not brown. Next, you rush to the mirror for a triage beauty check. Lipstick reapplied, hair patted down, apron straightened. Any flour or syrup smudges wiped away with spit and hope. You give yourself the peppy pep talk of a Broadway understudy. You've got this. You practiced for this. You are a 1950s housewife, and if history remembers nothing else, it will remember that your eyeliner was even and your living room at least looked orderly. The coffee pot is set to percolate with a flourish that would impress a Parisian barista. Teacups and saucers, the ones reserved for company, never for family, are yanked from their sacred spot at the back of the cabinet. Sugar bowl out, creamer poured, cookies on a plate, preferably the nice cookies, but in a pinch, the experimental jello is presented with the sort of brave optimism usually reserved for failed science fairs. As you crack the door open, your face fixed in a practiced mask of delighted surprise, you greet your guest, Mrs. Ferguson. Mrs. Miller, a church acquaintance, or the neighbor's cousin who just happens to be passing by. You usher them into the living room, praying silently that no one sits on the spot covering a ketchup stain, and that the dog remembers its training not to jump on knees or beg for scones. Conversation flows, or at least it stumbles amiably forward. You discuss the weather, the latest school event, whose son is dating whom, and exchange updates on casserole trends. All the while, you are hyper-aware of every surface in the room, checking, out of the corner of your eye, that the dust has not returned and that no child is sneaking behind the couch with forbidden popsicles. You offer coffee with a smile so bright it could sterilize countertops, laughing off small domestic mishaps with lines like, "Oh, you know how it is, children everywhere, never a dull moment," with the last sip of coffee and the final compliment about your hydrangeas. The crisis passes. Your guest gathers her purse, promises to drop by again very soon, and disappears back into the suburban ether. You close the door and lean against it, heart pounding, the adrenaline rush fading. You survey the battlefield, begin the slow process of restoring order, and reward yourself with the guest cookies. After all, you earned them. Because in the 1950s, the surprise visitor isn't just a test of hospitality. It's the ultimate pop quiz in grace, under pressure, resourcefulness, and the ability to make chaos look like calm at a moment's notice. And you, against all odds, pass with flying colors every single time. You open your closet each morning and confront the unsolvable riddle. What is casual when you still need to be prepared for a neighborhood photo, a surprise garden tour, and possibly an alien visitation? Every outfit is a gamble between style, comfort, and will this survive the 3 o'clock grape juice incident? In the world of the 1950s housewife, getting dressed isn't a simple matter of what's clean and doesn't itch. It's a daily episode of Project Runway, hosted by fate, chance, and the possibility of Mrs. Miller dropping by with her Polaroid. The pressure is on before your first cup of coffee. Your wardrobe must balance the scales of modesty, fashion, and the distinct possibility that you'll be crawling under the sofa after a runaway toy car by lunchtime. You start with the foundation, the girdle, of course, which promises instant polish and guaranteed regrets about dessert. Next, you survey your options: starched cotton shirtwaists in cheerful florals, crisp collars, and pleats that require a peace treaty with your iron. There are dresses for every possible occasion: the baking, but possibly being seen by a neighbor dress, the walking to the mailbox dress, and the coveted if the PTA president stops by, I'm ready emergency ensemble. And let's not forget aprons, which are both shield and statement piece, a floral printed talisman against all culinary and social disaster. Dressing is about more than just aesthetics. It's about tactical foresight. Is today likely to involve cleaning? Choose dark colors to camouflage dust and possible jelly handprints. Will you need to venture to the butcher or the bakery? Pick a look that says put together but not pretentious. Starched, accessorized, but with enough stretch to wrangle a turkey or a stubborn toddler. On days when the weather is especially unpredictable, you layer like a fashion-forward onion. Cardigan, scarf, sensible shoes, and maybe a brooch for luck. Accessories are not optional. Pearls, real or faux, bestow instant respectability and the illusion that you have everything under control. Gloves, yes, gloves, for church, errands, or the rare afternoon tea. Hats, perched just so, can transform a basic dress into a declaration of optimism. Even your handbag is chosen with intent. Large enough for a compact, lipstick, emergency coupons, and at least 2 handkerchiefs, one for you, one for any child or adult suffering a small personal crisis. But, inevitably, life intervenes. The dog leaps at you with muddy paws. The youngest launches grape juice at 3:04 p.m. Sharp, as per family tradition, you drop a dab of egg yolk on your skirt while scrambling breakfast, and at least one button pops off your blouse by mid-afternoon. The greatest test is not in how you look leaving your bedroom, but how gracefully you adapt to fashion emergencies on the fly. Safety pins are your secret weapon. An extra scarf hides a multitude of sins, and if all else fails, you adopt the breezy confidence of a Parisian. Oh, this old thing, just something I threw on. Fashion in the 1950s is survival, camouflage, and a kind of slow-motion performance art. There's a hierarchy of style in the neighborhood, a subtle but powerful scoreboard. You notice who always wears matching sets, whose petticoats are fluffed to perfection, and who, scandalously, has abandoned hose on a hot summer day. The stakes are high. A misstep in the world of culottes or prints, and you might spend a week as the subject of polite but persistent whispers. Yet for all the pressure, there is satisfaction in the daily costume change. When you catch your reflection, hair neat, lipstick fresh, skirt smoothed, you stand a little taller, knowing you're ready for whatever the day, or Mrs. Miller, or the aliens, throws your way. You are a survivor, armed with starch, bobby pins, and sheer force of will. Because after all, fashion isn't just about looking good. It's about being ready for anything, one carefully chosen outfit at a time. So here we are, at the end of a day in the life of a 1950s housewife. You've survived the endless laundry, the casserole emergencies, the high-stakes PTA negotiations, and the existential threat of dust behind the TV. You've smiled through school pickups, charmed your way through Tupperware sales pitches, and managed to keep your sanity while everyone else was losing theirs over chipped teacups. It's easy, from the comfort of your clean sheets and modern mattress, to look back and laugh at the absurd rituals, the relentless standards, and the parade of casseroles topped with ingredients nobody should ever eat on purpose. But there's a real resilience here too, a kind of quiet heroism in making the ordinary look effortless, in finding pride in a gleaming countertop or humor in a glue-eating toddler. These women built community out of cookie swaps and connection out of crisis. They made sanctuaries out of chaos and wore girdles with the stubborn optimism of people who believed somehow tomorrow's Jell-O mold would actually set. So tonight, as you tuck yourself in bed, maybe with a weighted blanket instead of a starched sheet, and the soft hum of a fan